The wind was sharp that Christmas Eve, slicing down Main Street like an impatient reminder that winter didn't care about sentiment. Shop windows glowed with warm, golden light, advertising last-minute deals and twinkling with decorations. But beyond those cheerful displays, the night was cold and unsparing. In the corner of the grocery store parking lot, where the pavement was cracked and forgotten, a rusted dumpster sat under a flickering lamp, and that's where he saw her. Sam Carter, 35, single father. A man whose hands carried both calluses and quiet tenderness, was loading groceries into the trunk of his beat-up Chevy when movement caught his eye. A small figure, bundled in mismatched layers, was standing on tiptoe, straining to look into the dumpster. Her coat was 2 sizes too big, her hair a tumble of curls escaping from a knit cap, and in her hands was a torn plastic bag filled with empty cans. For a moment, Sam thought maybe she was playing, a kid chasing some Christmas dare, but the way she paused, scanning the parking lot like a creature always ready to bolt, told him otherwise. His chest tightened. He'd been broke before. He knew that posture. Hunger had a certain shape. The night hummed with distant carols leaking from store speakers. But here, by the dumpster, it was silent except for the rustle of the girl's hands digging through refuse. Sam's instincts, part father, part man who'd seen the bottom himself, pulled him closer. "Hey," he called softly, careful not to scare her. The girl froze. She didn't turn around, didn't speak. Her fingers clutched a dented soup can like it was gold. Then, slowly, she looked at him. Wide hazel eyes, cautious but curious. She was maybe 9, maybe 10. Too young to have this kind of fear etched into her face. "Are you okay?" Sam asked, stepping closer, the grocery bag in his own hand suddenly feeling like a privilege. "You lost or something?" She shook her head, silent. Then she glanced back into the dumpster, as if she couldn't afford the conversation. That's when Sam noticed her shoes, thin sneakers with holes near the toes, the kind that let winter bite through. A man came out of the store, jingling keys, giving them a curious glance, but not stopping. Just another pair of strangers on Christmas Eve. The world was full of its own errands. Sam swallowed hard. "Where are your folks?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Then, barely above a whisper, "Not here." Something about those 2 words, small, cracked, and heavier than they should be, hit him like a punch. He could feel the weight behind them, the kind that only a child trying to carry the world could understand. He knew this wasn't just a lost girl. There was more. Always more. As a father, his mind flashed to his own son, Sam, asleep at home under a too small Christmas tree. Sam's laugh, Sam's needs, Sam's trust. And he thought, if it were my boy, would someone stop? Would someone care? The wind cut again, colder this time. And Sam made a decision before he even realized it. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Tell you what," he said, "I've got some extra. Let me get you something to eat. No strings. Just dinner. My treat." The girl hesitated, her knuckles white around that bag of cans. But there was a flicker in her eyes, a fragile mix of hope and disbelief. And that's where this story begins. A single dad, a stranger's child, and a truth hidden in the shadows of a holiday built on light. Stay with this moment, because what Sam was about to learn would change the way he saw Christmas forever. Sam Carter was not the kind of man who drew attention. A mechanic by trade, he worked long hours at a small auto shop off Route 17. The kind of place where customers knew you by name if you were lucky, or yelled at you if you weren't. He was a quiet worker, steady but invisible in a world that rarely rewarded patience. His hands bore the proof of years spent under hoods and chassis, grease that never quite washed off. And though his life was simple, his most treasured role was at home, single father to 8-year-old Sam, a boy with a grin wide enough to make up for any shortage of money. Sam had been underestimated his whole life. Dropped out of college when his wife left, took a job most people would call modest, and found a way to build a home out of very little. People looked at him and saw a tired man in work boots, not realizing how fiercely he loved or how hard he fought to keep the lights on. He'd learned to let people misjudge him. It was easier that way. But tonight, watching the little girl by the dumpster, he felt a shift. He didn't know her name yet, but something about her thin shoulders and brave silence reminded him of the quiet resilience he'd been forced to find. She was an echo of hardship he recognized too well. Across town, in a bright office with clean walls and a too-big desk, Another player in this story was preparing to close up for the holiday. Gerald Whitman, owner of Whitman Auto and Storage, was the kind of man who liked to remind people who signed their paychecks. He ran the auto shop where Sam worked, always dressed in crisp shirts and speaking with the certainty of someone who'd never missed a meal. Power came easily to him, and he wore it like armor. Gerald believed in numbers more than people, in bottom lines more than stories. He wasn't cruel in the way some villains are, but careless, an indifference that hurt more than he realized. Then there were the supporting cast of this quiet drama. Lila, the elderly cashier at the grocery store who noticed the girl more than once but didn't know how to help. Tom, a young deputy at the county sheriff's office, good-hearted but bound by rules. And even the shoppers who passed by, carrying full bags and full schedules, glancing at the girl but never stopping. Their silence was not malicious, but silence nonetheless. The injustice was small but sharp, an invisible line between those who had and those who did not. Sam could feel it as he stood there, groceries in hand, the little girl still hugging her bag of cans. And somewhere in the distance, Gerald Whitman's decisions about pay, schedules, and holiday bonuses were rippling into lives like hers and his, though he'd never see the cause and effect. Not yet. The next morning, Christmas Eve day, Sam was back at Whitman Auto, the smell of oil and burnt rubber hanging heavy in the air. The night before hadn't left his mind. He'd taken the little girl, whose name he now knew was Lily, to the diner across the street, bought her a burger and fries, and listened to her speak in clipped, careful sentences. She didn't share much. Just enough for him to know she didn't have anyone waiting for her at home. She'd thanked him like an adult would, polite but guarded. Then she disappeared into the night. He barely slept. When Sam clocked in, Gerald Whitman was already pacing the shop floor. His voice cut through the clanging of tools. "Carter," he barked. "I need that engine job done before noon. And make it fast. Customers don't wait just because you like to take your time." Sam wiped his hands on a rag, jaw tightening. Gerald's tone was nothing new, but today it grated harder. "I'll get it done," Sam said evenly, keeping his eyes on the car in front of him. "Don't give me attitude," Gerald shot back. "And don't expect any holiday leniency. Bonuses this year are off the table. Times are tough. You should be grateful you've got ours." The words landed like a slap. Sam thought of Sam's small stocking hanging by their kitchen window, a few candy bars tucked inside, and the new pair of sneakers he'd scraped money together to buy. They needed tea at bonus. Not for luxury, but for rent, for keeping the lights on. He kept his head down, but inside something was stirring. By mid-morning, the shop was buzzing. Customers were dropping off cars before family trips. The phones were ringing, and the techs were hustling. Sam stayed steady, but Gerald's presence loomed. Every chance he got, Gerald reminded the crew about deadlines, about cutting corners to save time. When a young customer complained about a scratched panel on her SUV, Gerald didn't apologize. He turned to Sam instead. "This is on you. Fix it, no charge. And next time, watch what you're doing." Sam wanted to speak up, to say he hadn't even touched that car, but he knew better. Gerald's word was law here. The other mechanics glanced at him, but said nothing. They had families too. Silence was safer. During lunch, Sam sat in the break room with his thermos and a peanut butter sandwich, staring at the dented table. Tom, the sheriff's deputy, stopped by to get his truck inspected and poked his head in. "Hey, Carter. You good? You look beat." Sam nodded. "Just a long night. You see that little girl again? Word is someone's been spotted around the grocery dumpsters. I've had a couple calls. Folks are worried." Sam stiffened. "She's just a kid. Probably needs some help." "Yeah, well, department policies to bring her in if she's out there again. Can't have minors roaming alone. Just giving you a heads up." Something about that twisted Sam's gut. The thought of Lily in some cold county office, treated like a case instead of a child, made his chest ache. He kept quiet, but made a silent promise to himself. If he saw her again, he wouldn't just let her vanish. By the time the shop closed early for the holiday, Gerald called everyone together. "Listen up. We're cutting hours next week. Too much overhead. If you can't keep pace, you won't be on the schedule. Carter, you especially need to step it up. No room for slackers." The words hung in the air like a hammer about to drop. Sam said nothing, but the room shifted. Everyone knew what Gerald meant. He was targeting Sam, the quiet man with the old Chevy and the son at home, the one whose kindness wasn't counted as profit. Sam walked to his car with his toolbox heavier than usual. Not because of the steel inside, but because of the weight pressing on his shoulders. His mind replayed Gerald's voice, Tom's warning, and Lily's cautious eyes. Something was building inside him, something long suppressed. He didn't know when it would break, but he knew this. He couldn't let another child go unseen, not while he still had a say. The drive home was quiet, the low hum of the engine filling the silence. Sam's hands rested lightly on the wheel, but his mind was miles away. The sun was sinking, washing the world in orange and gold, and with each mile, he kept seeing Lily's thin frame, Gerald's sneer, and the thin thread holding his own life together. At a red light, he found himself glancing at his calloused hands. To anyone else, they were just the hands of a mechanic, strong, scarred, stained with oil. But Sam knew better. They were also the hands of someone who once dreamed big, someone who could have been anywhere else. Years ago, before the long shifts and custody battles, he was a student at a state university, studying mechanical engineering. He had a knack for design, for seeing how things fit together. Professors had called him a natural problem solver, someone who could think in 3 dimensions. But when his wife left, and Sam was barely 2 years old, everything shifted. Classes ended. Bills stacked. The dream was shelved so a little boy could have diapers and food. He didn't regret the choice, not once, but sometimes, late at night, he wondered what might have been if he'd finished. Still, those skills never left him. In the shop, he could strip an engine blindfolded. He could improvise repairs with scraps when parts weren't available. Gerald never saw it. To him, Sam was just another wrench turner. But Sam carried that quiet confidence like a hidden flame. That night, after tucking Sam into bed, Sam sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold. The apartment was small, but it was theirs. A faded diploma hung in a cheap frame on the wall, a reminder of what he'd started but never finished. He stared at it for a moment, then at a notebook open in front of him. It was filled with sketches, ideas for custom tools, notes on fuel efficiency, and designs for things he'd never have time to build. It was a private world, one he kept hidden, even from most friends. It was where he reminded himself that he was more than a paycheck. His mind drifted back to Lily. What if she had dreams too? Hidden somewhere behind those cautious eyes? What if all she needed was someone to see them? Sam closed the notebook and leaned back, running a hand over his face. Something was coming. He could feel it like the first low rumble before a storm. He didn't know when or how, but he knew this. He was going to help that little girl. And when the moment came, he would be ready. Christmas morning dawned clear, but bitter cold. The streets were quiet. The kind of stillness that comes when the world pauses for a holiday. Sam woke early, made pancakes for Sam, and tried to push away the weight in his chest. But halfway through breakfast, his phone buzzed. It was Tom, the young deputy. "Carter," Tom said, his voice serious. "We got a call about that little girl again. Grocery store parking lot. This time, she's not alone. Looks like someone's trying to chase her off. Thought you'd want to know." Sam didn't hesitate. He told Sam to grab his coat and meet him at the truck. Something about Tom's voice told him this wasn't just another sighting. They were on the road in minutes, the Chevy's engine groaning against the cold. When they pulled into the lot, Sam's heart sank. Under the same flickering lamp, Lily was there, crouched near the dumpster. But this time, she wasn't scavenging alone. A tall man in a worn jacket was arguing with Gerald Whitman, who stood with 2 store employees behind him like an army. Gerald's voice carried across the lot, sharp and unyielding. "You can't be here," Gerald barked. "This is private property. Take your trash picking somewhere else. And you," he jabbed a finger at Lily, "need to come with us. Sheriff's orders." The man by Lily's side stepped forward, shielding her. His face was gaunt but proud, the kind of pride that holds even when everything else is gone. "She's my niece," he said. "We're not hurting anyone. We just needed food." Gerald sneered. "You think this is a charity lot? I've called the deputy. You're trespassing." Sam's boots crunched on the pavement as he approached. "Gerald," he called, his voice calm but carrying an edge. Everyone turned. "What's going on here?" "This isn't your business, Carter," Gerald snapped. "These people are loitering. I'm handling it." Tom's cruiser rolled in just then, lights off but presence clear. He stepped out, looking uneasy. "Let's keep this calm," he said. "Sir, you said she's your niece?" The man nodded. "Her mom, my sister, passed this year. No family left but me. Lost my job, Lost the house. We're just trying to make it through. We didn't want trouble. His voice cracked on the last word, but his shoulders stayed square. Gerald scoffed. Sad story or not, this is trespassing. Not my problem. And something in Sam snapped. For months, maybe years, he'd stayed quiet, let Gerald's arrogance roll off him. But not today. Not with Lily staring at the ground like she was already guilty. Not your problem, Sam said, stepping closer. She's a child. It's Christmas, and you're calling the law on her because she's hungry. Gerald's face reddened. Watch yourself, Carter. You work for me. Not if this is the man I work for, Sam replied. His voice was steady, but inside he felt something unlock. You talk about overhead and profits like they're the only thing that matter. But do you even know who fixes your cars when parts aren't available? Who keeps this place running when you're at your desk counting money? Gerald blinked. What are you getting at? Sam turned to Tom. Check the records. Every custom job that saved this shop thousands. Repairs done with improvised parts, redesigns, even safety fixes. Those were me. I know this business better than anyone here. And I'm done watching good people get treated like they're less. Tom's brow furrowed. That true, Gerald? Gerald shifted uncomfortably. Carter does his job. That's what I pay him for. Sam stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Gerald could hear. You've been cutting corners for months. I've covered for you, fixed your mistakes, made sure customers never saw the truth. But I've got records, every job, every time you ordered cheaper parts and billed full price. Don't push me. Gerald froze. His bluster faltered for the first time. Sam straightened, turning to Tom. This man's niece isn't trespassing. She's surviving. If you want to make an arrest, you better start with the guy profiting off lies. Otherwise, let them be. Silence spread across the lot. The store employees shifted uncomfortably, unsure which side to stand on. Tom looked from Sam to Gerald, then to the small girl clutching her uncle's hand. Finally, Tom nodded. Nobody's getting arrested today. Sir, you and the girl, there's a shelter down on Maple. I'll make a call. See if they can get you a spot. Lily's eyes lifted, wide and uncertain, then settling on Sam with something close to awe. Gerald turned on his heel, muttering, but everyone saw it. The power had shifted. Sam wasn't just the quiet mechanic anymore. He was a man who stood when it mattered, who carried more than grease on his hands. And as he led Sam back to the truck, the cold didn't bite so hard. He had stepped into something larger. And for the first time in a long time, Gerald Whitman looked very, very small. The parking lot scene stayed with everyone who witnessed it. Word spread fast in a small town, faster than Gerald Whitman could spin his version of events. By noon on Christmas Day, people were talking, at the diner, at the gas station, even at church. They spoke of a quiet mechanic who stood up to his boss, and a little girl who found kindness where she least expected it. Sam didn't think much of it when he left the grocery lot that morning. His only concern was Lily and her uncle. He followed Tom's cruiser to the shelter on Maple Street, a modest building with a painted sign that read, Safe Haven. The woman at the door, a kind volunteer named Marcy, welcomed them inside without hesitation. Lily clung to her uncle's hand, still shy but no longer afraid. Before they disappeared into the warmth of the shelter, she turned and gave Sam a small wave. It was the kind of wave that carried gratitude words couldn't hold. When Sam got home, Sam was buzzing with excitement. Dad, you were like a superhero out there, he said, eyes wide. Sam ruffled his hair and smiled. Superheroes are just people who don't look away, he said quietly. 2 days later, when Whitman Auto reopened, the air was different. Employees whispered and nodded toward Sam when he walked in. Gerald was already in the office, but his usual confidence was gone. He looked pale, tired, and far less sure of himself. By mid-morning, a black SUV pulled into the lot. It was Mr. Turner, the regional manager for Whitman's franchise network. Gerald met him outside, but it was clear from Turner's face that this wasn't a friendly visit. Documents were exchanged, voices rose, and then Turner called Sam over. Mr. Carter, Turner said, extending a hand. I've been reviewing some numbers. Seems you've been keeping this place afloat more than anyone realized. Some of the improvisations and repairs you handled saved this shop thousands. That's impressive. Gerald's face flushed crimson. It's teamwork, he muttered. But Turner didn't look at him. Mr. Carter, Turner continued. How would you feel about taking on a lead technician role? Better pay, full benefits. You've earned it. Sam blinked. He wasn't expecting this, not today. But he saw Sam's face in his mind, Lily's wave, and the quiet pride he'd buried for too long. "I'd be honored," he said simply. Gerald tried to protest, but Turner cut him off. "Gerald, we'll discuss your management practices separately. For now, consider yourself on probation. If we find any irregularities with billing, there will be consequences." The words were final. The employees nearby tried to hide their smiles. By afternoon, the atmosphere in the shop was lighter. The guys on the floor clapped Sam on the back, and even Lila from the grocery store stopped by with cookies. "You did a good thing, son," she said, pressing the tin into his hands. "That girl won't forget it. Neither will we." That night, Sam sat at the kitchen table again. Sam across from him with hot chocolate. The notebook was open, not just with sketches now, but with plans, ideas he might finally see through. The phone buzzed once more. It was a message from Tom. "Lily's doing well. Shelter's helping them get back on their feet. Thought you'd want to know." Sam smiled, the tightness in his chest loosening. He closed the notebook and looked at Sam. "You know," he said, "sometimes the world gives you a moment to step up. You just have to take it." The boy grinned. "And you did." Outside, the town was quiet again. Christmas lights blinking on porches and frost settling on car hoods. But inside their small apartment, there was warmth, hope, and a feeling that maybe things could turn. Sam knew there were still bills to pay, still long hours ahead. But he also knew this. He was more than what the world saw. And now, maybe, the world was starting to see it too. 6 months later, summer came to the small town with bright mornings and long, warm evenings. At Whitman Auto, things looked different. The sign on the front now read Carter and Sons Auto Repair. Sam had taken the lead role and, with the support of the franchise, bought into the business. Gerald Whitman? He was gone, forced to sell his shares after the franchise's audit confirmed what Sam had hinted at. Gerald moved 2 towns over. His name remembered only as a warning of what happens when pride blinds compassion. Inside the shop, there was a quiet sense of purpose. Employees who once kept their heads down now worked with more confidence. Sam raised wages where he could and started a small fund for employees facing hard times. People noticed. Customers trusted the shop more, not just because of good work, but because they felt cared for. And then there was Lily. She and her uncle had found steady footing. With help from the shelter, he got a job, and Lily started school that spring. Sometimes, when she walked home, she stopped by the shop just to say hi. She always ran straight to Sam, handing him little notes she wrote about her day. She laughed more now, her shy wave replaced by bright smiles. At home, life was still busy, but lighter. Sam was thriving, proud of his dad. And Sam? He finally dusted off that notebook of designs. At night, after dinner, he worked on new tools and ideas, building something bigger than himself, something he could leave for Sam, and maybe even others. Looking back, it wasn't one moment that changed everything but the choice not to look away. Sam learned that small acts of courage could shift entire stories. Standing up for a child searching through trash reminded him, and everyone watching, that dignity is not a privilege. It's a right. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who might need hope today. Subscribe to the channel, and remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop, see, and care.